How did the birth of a new religion in a corner of the Roman Empire come to shape the course of human history? This is a question that has fascinated scholars for centuries. The 1st century AD marked the genesis of a religious revolution, the birth and early spread of Christianity. Originating in the Eastern Mediterranean, Christianity emerged as an offshoot of Judaism, its message spread by followers of Jesus Christ, a charismatic preacher whose teachings were documented in what we know today as the New Testament. Christianity, however, was not the only religious practice in the Roman Empire during this time. Traditional Roman religious practices, deeply ingrained in the fabric of society, continued unabated. These practices were polytheistic, venerating a pantheon of gods and goddesses, each governing different aspects of life and the natural world. The worship of the emperor, too, was a significant part of Roman religious life. Emperors were often deified, a practice that served to reinforce their authority and the unity of the empire. This form of worship, known as the imperial cult, was not just about paying homage to the emperor, but also served as a testament to Rome's power and the divine sanction of its rule. However, as Christianity began to spread, it faced considerable opposition. Early Christians were often persecuted for their refusal to participate in traditional Roman religious practices, including the imperial cult. Despite these challenges, the message of Christianity found resonance among diverse sections of society, its spread facilitated by the extensive network of Roman roads and the relative peace of the Pax Romana. The 1st century AD, therefore, was a time of religious coexistence and conflict within the Roman Empire. Christianity was gradually gaining followers, yet it was still a minority religion, its future uncertain. The old gods of Rome were still worshipped, their rituals performed in grand temples and at public ceremonies, their images adorning homes and public spaces. So, while Christianity was just beginning to make its mark, traditional Roman religious practices still held sway. This period of religious transformation set the stage for the dramatic changes that were to follow in the centuries to come. What happens when a new belief system begins to define its doctrines? As Christianity spread across the Roman Empire, there was a pressing need for a unified set of beliefs, principles, and practices. This led to the consolidation of Christian doctrines, a process that played out between 100 and 300 AD. The first 2 centuries of Christianity were marked by diverse interpretations and practices. It was a time when the early Christian community was grappling with questions about the nature of Christ, the path to salvation, and the role of the Church. The consolidation of Christian doctrine was a response to these debates, a way of bringing cohesion and unity. During this period, the Church Fathers played a pivotal role. These theologians and scholars, such as Irenaeus, Tertullian, and Origen, began to articulate and defend the core tenets of Christianity. Their writings provided clarity, shaping the Christian doctrine and defining the essence of Christian faith. The formation of a unified church structure was another significant development. It created a hierarchical system that maintained order, facilitated the spread of Christianity, and ensured the preservation of its doctrines. The church became the pillar and foundation of truth, a place where believers could gather, worship, and learn about the teachings of Christ. While Christianity was solidifying its doctrines, Eastern religions were experiencing their evolution. In India, the Upanishadic philosophy was evolving into the systematic thought of classical Hinduism. Meanwhile, in China, Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism were engaging in a dynamic interplay, influencing each other and shaping the spiritual landscape of East Asia. This was a period of spiritual exploration and intellectual ferment. It saw the establishment of essential Christian doctrines and the evolution of Eastern religions. These developments laid the foundation for the religious landscape of the subsequent centuries. Thus, Christianity began to solidify its doctrines, while Eastern religions continued to evolve. The story of religion is, in many ways, a story of change and continuity, of beliefs being defined and redefined. And as we move forward, we'll continue to see how these doctrines and philosophies shaped the world. What impact did the conversion of a Roman emperor have on the spread of Christianity? This question brings us to the pivotal era of 300 AD to 500 AD, an epoch characterized by the rise of Christianity as a state religion. Emperor Constantine the Great is a key figure in this narrative. His reign, which began in 306 AD, was marked by a series of military campaigns, political maneuvers, and religious transformations. The most significant of these was his conversion to Christianity, Now, this wasn't just a personal change of heart. Constantine's conversion had profound implications for the entire Roman Empire. His newfound faith was reflected in the policies he enacted, notably the Edict of Milan in 313 AD. This proclamation granted religious tolerance throughout the empire, ending the persecution of Christians and setting the stage for the religion's unprecedented growth. Prior to Constantine, Christianity was considered a subversive and illicit faith. With the Edict of Milan, it was elevated to a legally recognized religion. This was a monumental shift in the position of Christianity within the empire, but Constantine didn't stop there. He took it a step further by integrating Christian values and symbols into the state apparatus, effectively making Christianity the state religion. This period also witnessed the decline of pagan religions in Europe. The growing influence of Christianity and the support it received from the state led to a gradual fading of traditional Roman religious practices. Pagan temples were transformed into Christian churches, and pagan festivals were replaced by Christian holidays. The transformation was so comprehensive that by the end of Constantine's reign, Christianity had become the dominant faith in the Roman Empire. The conversion of Constantine and the rise of Christianity as a state religion marked a turning point in the history of the Roman Empire and the wider world. It set the stage for the Middle Ages, where Christianity would become the spiritual and cultural bedrock of Europe. With Constantine's conversion, Christianity was not just a religion, but the religion of the Roman Empire. How did two ancient religions find new followers in distant lands? This question sets our journey into the period between 500 and 700 AD, a time when the religions of Buddhism and Hinduism began to spread throughout Asia. Buddhism, born in India, started to find its way into Southeast Asia and East Asia. As traders, monks, and pilgrims traveled along the Silk Road, they carried with them the teachings of the Buddha. These teachings resonated with the people they encountered, and Buddhism began to take root in these new lands. It was a time of great religious and cultural exchange, with Buddhist thought and philosophy blending with local traditions and beliefs. Simultaneously, Hinduism, another major religion of India, was also on the move. This period saw the Gupta Empire, often referred to as the Golden Age of India, where Hindu culture, science, and art flourished. The Gupta rulers were devout Hindus, and their patronage helped in the proliferation of Hinduism within the empire's territories and beyond. This era saw the creation of iconic Hindu temples and the composition of important texts that helped shape the religion. As Buddhism and Hinduism spread, they evolved to reflect the cultures and philosophies of the regions they reached. In Southeast Asia, for instance, Hindu and Buddhist concepts were often blended together, creating unique expressions of these faiths. Meanwhile, in East Asia, Buddhism was transformed as it interacted with local traditions like Taoism and Confucianism. The spread of these religions was not just a matter of faith, but also of culture. The arts, sciences, and philosophies associated with Buddhism and Hinduism were carried along with the religious teachings. As a result, they had a profound impact on the societies they touched, influencing everything from architecture to the philosophical outlook of the people. While Christianity spread in the West, Buddhism and Hinduism found new homes in the East. This period marked the beginning of a rich tapestry of religious and cultural exchange that would shape the Asian continent for centuries to come. How did a new religion rise from the deserts of Arabia to span continents? As we delve into the period between 700 to 900 AD, we witness the birth and rapid expansion of Islam. Starting in the Arabian Peninsula, a region of arid deserts and scattered oasis towns, Islam emerged. Its origins are attributed to the Prophet Muhammad, who in the early 7th century began preaching a message of monotheism and social reform in Mecca. His teachings, which were believed to be revelations from the divine, were later compiled into the Quran, the holy book of Islam. But how did Islam spread so rapidly? One major factor was the political climate of the time. The Arabian Peninsula sat between two superpowers of the era, the Byzantine and Persian empires, both of which were weakened by centuries of warfare. This allowed the newly united Arab Muslim forces to swiftly conquer these territories. From there, Islam spread like a wave, reaching the far corners of the Middle East and North Africa. The Byzantine provinces of Syria, Palestine, Egypt, and the entirety of the Persian Empire fell under Muslim rule. The Umayyad Caliphate, established in 661 AD, was instrumental in this expansion, pushing the frontiers of Islam westward into North Africa and eastward into Central Asia. By the early 8th century, Muslim forces had crossed the Strait of Gibraltar, marking the beginning of Islam's presence in Europe. Over the next century, much of the Iberian Peninsula would become part of the Islamic world, a region known as Al-Andalus. The Umayyad Caliphate of Cordoba, established in 756 AD, became a beacon of learning and culture in medieval Europe. But this expansion wasn't just about conquest. Islam's growth was also fueled by trade, intellectual exchange, and the appeal of its spiritual message. Many people, drawn to the faith's emphasis on equality and community, voluntarily converted to Islam, further spreading its influence. In just 2 centuries, Islam had transformed the religious landscape from the Arabian Peninsula to Spain. From its humble beginnings, Islam had grown into a global faith that continues to shape our world today. What happens when seafaring warriors bring their gods to new lands? Let's talk about the Viking Age, a turbulent yet fascinating era, marked by the spread of Norse religion and mythology across parts of Europe. The Viking Age, which spanned from the late 8th to the early 11th century, was a time when the seafaring Norsemen, known as Vikings, ventured far from their Scandinavian homelands. They sailed the seas, explored new territories, and yes, brought their gods with them. The Norse religion was a polytheistic one, centered around a pantheon of deities like Odin, Thor, and Freya, each with their unique attributes and domains of power. These Vikings were not just warriors and explorers, but also storytellers. They passed on their beliefs through an oral tradition, birthing a rich tapestry of myths and legends that have stood the test of time. These stories, filled with gods, giants, and heroes, offer insights into the Viking worldview and their understanding of the cosmos. At the heart of Norse religion was the concept of a heroic life. The Vikings believed in an afterlife, where those who died bravely in battle would be welcomed into Valhalla, the hall of the slain, to feast with the gods. This belief often fueled their daring exploits on and off the battlefield. Parallel to the spread of Norse religion, Christianity continued to expand its reach during the Viking Age. Initially, the Vikings were in contact with Christian communities during their raids, but over time, these interactions led to cultural exchanges and conversions. By the end of the Viking Age, Christianity had begun to replace the Old Norse religion in many parts of Scandinavia, marking a significant shift in the religious landscape of the region. The Viking Age stands as a testament to the dynamic interplay of different belief systems. It was a time when old gods met new faiths, where warriors turned storytellers, and where seafarers became agents of religious diffusion. As the first millennium drew to a close, the religious map of the world had changed dramatically. What lasting impacts did these religious shifts have on our world? As we journey through the centuries, we see the world evolving and with it, the religious landscape. One pivotal development was the rise of Christian monasticism. Born out of the desire for a more spiritual life, monasticism took root in the hearts of early Christians. Monks and nuns living in secluded communities dedicated themselves to prayer, contemplation, and service. Their commitment to preserving knowledge, particularly in Europe, became a beacon in the so-called Dark Ages. Through their painstaking work of copying manuscripts, they saved countless texts from oblivion, ensuring the survival of vital strands of human thought and culture. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, the formation of Islamic Caliphates was another notable development. The Umayyad and Abbasid Caliphates were more than just political entities. They were crucibles of cultural and scientific advancement. The Islamic Golden Age, fostered under their rule, saw significant strides in fields like mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and literature. The Caliphate's libraries and translation projects ensured that the wisdom of the ancients was not lost, but was instead enriched and passed on to future generations. Moving further east, Buddhism found a new home in East Asia. Introduced to China, it gradually spread to Korea and Japan. Buddhism's teachings of compassion, impermanence, and the pursuit of enlightenment resonated with many in these regions. The religion's influence permeated every facet of life, from art and literature to philosophy and statecraft. The ripple effects of Buddhism's diffusion into East Asia are still felt today, shaping the spiritual and cultural life of millions. Back in Europe, the seeds of a major rift in Christianity were being sown. The beginnings of the Great Schism were subtle, arising from differences in theology, ecclesiastical politics, and cultural practices between the Eastern and Western churches. Over time, these rifts would widen, leading to the definitive split between the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. The schism had profound implications for the Christian world, creating distinct religious traditions that continue to shape the lives and beliefs of billions today. In sum, the first millennium was a crucible of change. It was a time when major world religions spread across continents, intertwining with state power and reshaping societies. It was also a time of significant cultural exchanges, as ideas, beliefs, and knowledge were shared, translated, and transformed. The echoes of this era resonate in our world today, in our diverse religious practices, our shared intellectual heritage, and our ongoing quest for spiritual understanding and communion. From the spread of major religions to the intertwining of religion and state power, the first millennium was a time of profound change and cultural exchange.